3, 2. Hey everyone, welcome to episode, 351? We missed 350. Well, we didn't miss it, but we missed the opportunity. Plans to do something cool, and
I blame you, Randy.
I blame Tony.
Okay,
let's blame Tony. Tony's not here to defend himself.
He's not even here.
I know, and we keep looking for that Disney Castle hookup that we just can't seem to put our finger on. And
it'll happen.
It'll happen. See, it'll happen. Dream big. Dream big. Eat your green beans.
Upon a star.
That's it. Eat your green beans. It will come true. It's true. All right. So for this,
see, you're paying penance for dissing green beans there, Randy.
I know.
I heard you got taken to task on a social media platform.
Yeah, did a little bit, and just reminding me that it was I need to be eating my green beans, and he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong, and I freely admit I should eat more green beans.
Brussels sprouts too.
Oh, see, now that's a deal breaker.
I draw the line at lima beans. That's right.
Oh, I won't do those either. That's just little pouches of sand.
You just haven't had them cooked correctly yet.
Lima beans.
Oh,
there's a correct way to cook them.
There is a correct way to do lima beans. There's a correct way to do Brussels sprouts. So I think we should just have a party with all greens.
So, I agree with you on the Brussels sprouts, but I'm there. But I have never had correctly. Correctly made lima beans. I honestly don't think that's possible.
You have to cook them for a long time.
There's not enough butter.
Yeah, and bury them in something else.
There's not enough butter or cheese to make that an idea that I'm willing to put.
I don't know.
You bring in Melanie. We'll try it. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, beans don't have. Everybody talks to me about grits, that you haven't had grits until. So for me, I have no problem with any beans, fava beans, lima beans. But when you try to tell me grits or okra, although I have to say,
Monday.
See, John, here's the thing, Jeff. You are so giving away that you are not a Southern man.
That is probably true. Yeah.
Let me guess. You drink your tea straight up without sugar.
I do.
Too.
Oh, yuck. What's wrong with you?
So much comes out in these podcasts.
I know.
And the lines are already drawn, I can tell.
And Randy was like, this is going to be a short one. He didn't realize we were going to have a whole smackdown on appropriate foods to eat. So
I had no idea that people were judged by their tea.
Do you do sweet tea, Randy?
Oh, I don't drink tea of any kind.
I mean, I'm not a big tea drinker, period.
Yeah. Hot tea. Now, if you give me a nice glass of hot tea, but I'm not into cold things that taste bitter. That's not cool.
Well, that's because you're not drinking the sweet tea.
The sweet tea is not
so you are one of us there.
No, it's the tea's got that kind of tea has a nasty aftertaste that I just don't go for. And
I do not know what you're talking about.
You drink black coffee, and I'm like, yeah, that tastes good. I don't know what you guys are drinking, but see, I'll go along with grits. I love grits.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can.
Grits are good.
There's a lot of different good ways to do grits.
Yeah,
there's some bad ways to do them.
There
are some bad ways.
Grits should not be sweet.
No, it's like meat should not be sweet.
You don't like honey on your grits?
No. I don't think so. I mean, I think that'd be a tough sell.
There's just no way to hide it.
Okay.
A nice block of sharp young cheddar.
That is good.
Marking in there. That's one. Cream cheese is another.
I don't know. Cheese, yes. I can understand how cheese might cover up some of the taste.
Well, at least
being from Wisconsin, but I've had cheese on apple pie, too. Cheese on apple pie is really good.
Ooh,
that's not even just a Wisconsin thing. I found out that people...
It's a German thing.
Well, yeah, and it is a... one of my clients years ago was like, do you know about caramelized... sweetened condensed milk? And I'm like, I didn't think anyone else in the world knew about this. But from a young age, my grandma would put it in the can. You don't open it and you assume it's going to blow up and go through the roof or set the kitchen on fire. But you put a full can in a pot of boiling water on low boil.
Caramelize it.
About 3 hours, and it just sits in the can and it rattles on the stove. Yeah. And then we take it out. It's full caramel. You mix that with a little whipped cream, and you put that over angel food cake, and that is known as cake and topping in the Schneider family.
I'm willing to try that.
Yes, you are.
You bring that.
Okay.
Melanie, bring the lima beans. We'll see which one's better.
Man,
We'll see which one's better.
Y'all can write in now. You can start writing in and letting us know your favorite.
We're trying to decide whether this is a religious blog or a food blog, or a blog or podcast or something else.
I'm just hoping nobody out there is trying to watch their calorie intake or anything like that, because we have definitely tempted them above what they're able to bear.
With this much butter, that might be heart attack on a plate late for me. But anyway,
we need to talk more about this caramelized stuff.
Oh no.
Afterwards.
I'll teach. It's in. So we're about 5 minutes in. So
we need to.
We probably need to get going here. So because the cost is really what we're thinking about here. Is calories.
The calories are a cost.
Oh, there you go.
It's a cost.
Way to bring it around.
Nice.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice.
I was wondering how we were going to do that. But when we started off this week, I was a little worried again. Last week, of course, we talked about green beans and we talked about the velvet sledgehammer. We talked about ice cream melting in front of you while you had to eat your green beans. And I felt like in first service, in the response time, we got a chance to talk a little bit about that. And that I felt like Ken gave us a little ice cream this week. It wasn't all green beans, but I was a little nervous starting off because the first story he started with was about the rich young ruler, which for me, I feel like that's the vantage point of you can go multiple different directions. You can be the person that's like, well, I'm not rich, so Jesus would never ask that of me because he was rich and what I got, I'm not rich. So yeah, or yeah, see, it's those rich people. They're the problem. They're the ones that are greedy, and that's why the rest of us don't have anything. And see, Jesus was just pointing that out. Or he's, we really feel bad for him a little bit because he's probably, like Ken said, he's probably going to hell because he's not going, he can't be going to heaven because he
Picked
clearly
wrong.
Yeah, right. He drew the wrong response card when he was answering.
Made a mistake.
And then you throw the camel in the eye of the needle. You throw that in there. I mean, these are all ones as a kid and growing up. I always thought, well, that's impossible. And of course, that's what we were talking about this week. What's impossible for us is not impossible for God. But bridging those two gaps to me seems even harder. And then Ken brings up in both services, you were blessed this week. God was his favor was with you because you got Peter in first service, and you got, what was her name?
Numa.
Okay.
Numa, you're awesome. Leah's too.
It's amazing.
I mean, both, you couldn't have picked two better people to do this illustration to really teach us about value. And not that we didn't know that, but I think it landed differently this week when you saw Peter in your conversation about, well, would you give me your cane? When it's like, look, I need that to, God asks for, hard things. And then with Numa, you're like, well, hey, 6 figures. And then all of a sudden she's ready to give you.
Yeah. For those of you who might not, we're talking about, I asked Numa for her wedding band and an engagement ring, I think. And so she wasn't thrilled about the idea until she heard that the penny could be worth six figures. Yeah.
But visually, it was just, and if you haven't seen either of the messages, if nothing else, go back and check out both of those, because I think the conversation that happened between both were really true in real time. I mean, nobody was making an act. Nobody was trying to, because nobody knew what was going to happen.
Nope.
But I thought both of them landed in different ways for me personally about what and how each of us differently views the value of Jesus. And then what strikes me then is how do we start that process of understanding, or even, I never really knew for a long time that I needed to understand what the value of Jesus was. Wasn't that like, it's salvation? Put the hammer, drop the gavel, court dismissed. Isn't that it? But I thought both of those really showed a humanity in the process of, even though it was a shortened, obviously, than what we go through in life. But what did you guys think? I just found that was really an engaging piece that now I'm thinking to myself, how am I valuing Jesus, and how am I really, really valuing my relationship with him? We all work for a church. We're here every week trying to find new ways to engage people with the good news.
I like this. I really liked how this worked out. And by the way, I do think it is a process. We always make it ultimatums, that God throws ultimatums at us. But what if he threw process at us? In other words, here's what I'd like you to consider. Now, he made it an ultimatum for the rich young ruler. It was kind of a one-off story. And then, of course, Ken brings it around to this, could have been Joseph, could have been. I actually got off. We had a big discussion about it in the afternoon about it, which was fun.
I thought I felt my ears burning.
But I do think that Christ understands how paradigm shifting his words are. I don't think those are ultimatums. I think those are pieces that he gives us. And he doesn't give us all of it either. I think if you listen to the story, it kind of came in pieces anyway. So I do think that God gives us much more idea about what a process could look like in the journey, as opposed to do this or not. Yeah. And I like that piece that kind of got brought out in a way to, what if that was just the beginning for this rich young ruler instead of the ending?
Yeah. Melanie?
Oh, no, I like it. What he said.
What he said.
No, I thought it was a really cool idea to think of. Obviously, there's no proof that the two are connected, but I really did like the idea, because maybe he wasn't that rich young ruler, but he might have been another rich young ruler from another moment or whatever. But I think it's cool to look at it as not the end, but maybe the beginning.
Yeah, the other thought that, I mean, we know that Saul of Tarsus was alive when Jesus was here on earth. He would have been a young man, probably. He would have potentially had the opportunity to run into Jesus. I mean, that you go through these lists of people who clearly rejected Jesus when he was here on earth. Saul, who became Paul, and they have these moments where the right moment comes and they do make the decision for Christ. And I think I loved what Jeff just said. It's process, and sometimes we get hung up on just individual moments instead of viewing it as perhaps a process that any salesperson knows that the first time somebody says no, you're not done. I mean, you'd be a terrible salesperson if you gave up at the first no. Am I right, Randy? Yeah, that's not sales. Sales is, okay, you said no. What about this? What about that? What about this? So, and which is not to put God as a giant salesman in the sky or something, but it's to say that it's kind of funny that if we think that the guy trying to sell us produce won't give up on the first no, that the God of the universe, who tells us that he loves us and views us as children, would somehow give up on us when we say no or make a mistake.
So what are the questions then if you are the person who just got the sales pitch? I mean, what are the questions that you can ask or bring to God when you're not sure that the answer, that you even have an answer, or that, was that God that was talking to me about this? Or is this just a premonition? Is this just something I've picked up from wherever? Because I find it difficult sometimes to discern, what am I listening to? Did I pick this up from here? Did I pick it up from here? I had a conversation with this person, and now I'm thinking about this. Or was God using that person? And maybe not everyone is that busy in the brain, but I can overanalyze the business out of anything, giving myself half a chance, and the devil knows that better than anybody. What can we tell people that might be thinking, man, that sounds plausible? Maybe it sounds illogical. What are those things that where you can maybe even just to start the process, or trust that maybe God is speaking to you? Because I think that part in itself can be confusing if that's not something you've ever thought about doing, or even thought about listening. I hate that word. Listen.
I think it's harder on the other side, though. I think it's harder, to already have an established belief structure that you say, this is my apps. This is I'm not budging on this. I think it's harder to approach a new paradigm, especially Christ, as he reveals himself to us, however that might be for any of us. But for us to say, no, that can't happen that way, that's an even harder thing, I think, when we create absolutes that Christ can't cross that line with me, or can't move, or this is how I view Christ, and I'll never change that. But to be open, to be able to walk into a conversation with somebody and say, I want to think about that more, or I never looked at it that way. And we were talking actually this morning in our worship, but I do think that sometimes we create absolutes in our minds that make it really difficult, almost paralyzing, to accept these, accept something new that Christ might do for us, or make us see something in a different way. Mostly because we feel like we already have it down. We already have it pat.
Yeah,
that's our security. Don't take that away from me.
Yeah.
My dad was that way, and I was really wanting him to change his outlook of God because he had this idea that unless every single sin was, verbally, forgive or confessed, there might be something hanging out there somewhere in his life and it really persecuted him. And and we worked through that for a while, but it was hard for him to move away from that mindset.
So you're saying just being open and just a little trust, a little, let's try this and see how it goes without any.
I don't think we should be afraid of doubt, is what I'm saying.
Okay. That's fair.
We do get afraid of that because we feel like,
sure.
Somebody's pulling the rug out from underneath me. But if faith, if a faith is what we believe it to be, in terms of God continues to give it, then quite possibly we can still have faith after doubt.
So, Randy, why do you think it is that Jesus, God, calls us to follow him?
Well, I think it's because he wants to be in relationship with us and eventually have that relationship go back to the original plan of being together all the time, like it was in Eden. I don't know if that's
So I like that. And if that's the case, I was thinking about it's kind of funny sometimes you use an illustration and you were talking about how Peter and Numa did such a great job, and they were fabulous. Mm-hmm. And to the point that they actually made me think a little bit more about the illustration. And what kind of jumped out at me as I was thinking about it was that the rich young ruler asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And so Jesus gave this rich young ruler an answer. But as I was kind of pondering through this, because I was thinking about, the penny that I had, because one of the ways that I was like, I don't know if I like the metaphor I'm using is because the penny that I actually had up on the platform with me was really only worth 15 cents. I didn't have $100,000, $150,000, $1.5 million coin that's like, ooh, really expensive and really worth a lot of money. So it's like, am I?
Because Ken's zip code would be different.
Yeah, it would probably be a little bit different. Or at least my neighborhood might be. But anyway,
this Ferrari is parked out front.
Yeah,
right.
But I got to thinking about it, and in that, I wonder sometimes if salvation is the 15 cent part of the conversation that was happening up on the platform. I wonder if the real valuable thing is not salvation, but the reason why salvation would matter is because you get to be in relationship with somebody you love for eternity, that you get to be in relationship with God for eternity, and that sometimes we kind of hold up heaven and we hold up never dying as like the reward, and when the real reward is to be in a love relationship with the God that created us. And I just wonder if, between Peter and Numa, when I was actually rehearsing this, because we rehearsed it a couple times, and Melanie gets to hear my sermons multiple times. And so she was my guinea pig that came up and did the part that Numa and Peter did. And at one point she said something to me, and I never figured out how just to kind of hone it down and really work in the sermon. But she said, I asked her if she'd trade something. She said, "Do you need it?" And she said, "Because I'll trade it to you if you need it." Why? Because we're friends, and not because the penny's worth anything to me, but because we're friends. I'm happy to give it to you. And man, that kind of hits home for you, doesn't it? Because if maybe there's things that we're willing to do for God because we're his friend, but not because we think we're going to get eternal life or because we think we're going to walk on streets of gold, but because we're friends, I'll do that for you. It doesn't look more valuable to me, but you're valuable to me, so I'll go ahead and do it. And that was something that I went home. It's funny. Sometimes you'll preach a sermon, you'll go back and you'll think about it and be like, I want a do-over. There's more there to be said, but that's why we have a podcast. So
yeah.
Well, I like the valuation part of it because it seems like our valuations are consistently pretty messed up with what we prioritize. You mentioned that in the message about, what was it this week that, you prioritized over Jesus, or what, you probably know what those are without thinking too hard. But sometimes just the friend that you're not thinking in monetary, or what am I getting back, or, what am I going to get out of this? Melanie got a bag of stale popcorn this afternoon, and I'm pretty sure
amazing.
that, she wasn't going like, well, I'm sure I'm glad I smiled at Randy this morning, because he probably would have given me that bag of stale popcorn had I not smiled at him. So I think I like the part of thinking it that way. And also when the message first started, I thought, often that story only focuses, or it brings our focus into the monetary, because it's something we can all understand, because money, we all need it to make things, to eat and to live and to be a part of society. But, when those things become the non-money part, or the non-financial part, to me, that's almost harder, because now you start getting into personal territory where, we all need our money. We know that, but most of us are willing to, I think, be generous enough to give to someone who has a little less, or they may need some help. But when you start talking about the personal things, then to me, that almost seems like it's a little scarier, because what is it that exactly you're asking from me, or what could you ask me that I might be less inclined to just hand over?
Well, think about the person that you love the most in the world. Visualize that person, and then ask yourself, what wouldn't you give up if it meant helping them, if it meant saving their life, if it meant making things okay for them? And when you really love somebody, there's not much that you wouldn't do. You would mortgage the house. You would sell everything you have. I have a friend right now who has a spouse who's been diagnosed with a terrible form of cancer, and they've spent crazy amounts of money to try to find healing. And for them, that money it's not a thing for my friend. It's not a thing, because he loves that person. And that's what we really want to kind of focus on when it comes to the cost. The cost varies depending on the person and how much you love them. For me to sell everything I have to give to a person I don't know, who I think might squander it, no thanks. But to do that for my wife or one of my kids, because it's going to save them,
without a doubt,
let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, I should interject, just for the record, before Randy gets excoriated on social media, that I like stale popcorn.
Oh, well, thank you.
He brought me stale popcorn. He was being a good friend. He wasn't doing something terrible unto me. But,
So the lima bean thing goes way out the window now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the rich young ruler asked the wrong question. Mm-hmm. Because he shows up and he says, what do I need to do to be saved? And I wonder if he had asked a different question. I wonder if Jesus' answer was like, you want to do something? Okay, well, here's what you can do. Do this thing. But I wonder if he came along and asked something else, something relational, something about, what does Jesus do? What is this relationship? Rather than this transactional piece.
Do you have an idea?
I really like that, Mel.
Do you have an idea what the question he should have asked? Could have asked?
Or maybe the question he did ask was pretty revealing, though.
It was revealing. Yeah. But I think as we're talking about the cost, it's a good idea to not show up in the rich young ruler's shoes and ask Jesus, all right, what do I need to do to be saved? But rather look at that story and be like, interesting. Maybe he asked the wrong question. Maybe I need to approach this differently. Because the cost, like Ken already said, is following Jesus.
Well, I like that because that goes into what Jeff said about, we have these ideas about that, the fear that paralyzes us from even making a decision. So, maybe that was the only question he thought pertinent to the situation.
It was how he related to it.
Right, or how he related. But if we're going to really start from someplace and say, God, what do you have for me? I mean, it's kind of a scary thought because, again, you always wonder what the cost might be. But the more that you study, the more that you spend time, the more that you pray. At least for me, I found that it's become less about salvation. Like you mentioned, that I think, and maybe when you get to a spot where you've figured that part out, that there's nothing that you can do for yourself, and you're already relying on Jesus for that part. So maybe if we've just agreed that you've gotten to that point, it's a little easier then to not be so worried about other details and just kind of put yourself out there, because what's the worst that can happen? And in a lot of ways, for those of us who've done those, there's been some really cool stories to share. There's been times where, you may have made the wrong decision. I always think about the person that, I totally blew off when I was going for coffee, and then, find out that this person is out of a job and he's owed all this money and he's not for need of anything except he's hungry. And he doesn't have any cash. And I blew him off, and the Holy Spirit was like, no, go back. First off, apologize because you were a jerk. And then second, get the man some breakfast, right? And that's an easy thing that if I asked you, if someone came up to you this morning or this evening and said, I need a meal, would you do it? I think most of us would. If we had the ability financially to do it, why wouldn't you as a Christian? But when you don't listen and then you go in and you doubt or you don't have time, that's where you end up being like, now I have to apologize. I could have just bought him breakfast and felt good about it. But instead I had to apologize first because I didn't take the time
I don't know.
to listen.
I've got to go with Jeff on the doubt thing. I think doubt is not the problem. It's part of the process.
Okay.
I think it's a necessary element for faith. If you don't have doubt, you don't have faith.
Isn't somebody writing a dissertation on that?
It's almost, maybe someone should.
Somebody should do that.
Yes.
They should, totally, if they're not.
Preaching doubt. Yes. Yeah. Actually, that is the title of it.
Is it?
Preaching doubt. Yeah. Toward
go.
a metamodern homiletic in the
Yeah.
era of deconstruction.
Say that slowly one more time for us. The title of your dissertation.
Preaching doubt toward a metamodern homiletic in the era of deconstruction.
Okay, that alone should get you your doctorate.
I know. I was just like, that sounds like an A just in the title. But for those of us a little less educated in this area, what does that mean?
It means, well, here's what I'm saying that it means.
Okay.
Doubt for a long time has gotten a bad rap. Doubt is the opposite of belief, the opposite of faith, the opposite of everything we're going for. But on the other side of it, doubt can actually be the catalyst for an incredible amount of growth. You can doubt yourself toward growth.
Okay.
You can doubt yourself toward God. It might be actually a bigger God that shows up if you've doubted the smaller God.
Sounds like such a good idea for some sermons.
There you go.
Is that do you think any sermons could be coming our way like that anytime soon, Melanie?
Well, possibly. How about next month?
Next month?
Should we talk about this next month?
Let's do that.
All right.
Okay. I think
because Melanie's preaching next month.
I think we should plan these things further in advance. It sounds like this is a last minute throw together. We really should consider maybe being more organized in the future, right?
I do love the idea of it being the first step, because we always think of it as being, oh no, this is the trap door that I dropped out of. And now it's the first step of I'm perplexed, I'm baffled, I'm confused. That is where you want to be.
So you not only have permission to doubt, but it can be encouraged. Yeah. And don't feel like you're not alone or that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Seeking. Yeah.
I like it. Man, those could be encouraging words.
It's a good thing we got some encouraging sermons coming up.
Yeah, I know, right? Because we're going to be talking about desserts on the next podcast, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's how that's going to play out. So if you had everything that we've talked about, the talk about the cost, all that, if there was one thing that you think is most important to someone who's just realizing maybe in more fullness that there is a cost to following Jesus for the first time, and really understanding that. Because I feel like over the last 2 weeks, we've gone a lot of different directions, but we've really realized that with everything in this world, there is a cost. And, something as grand and great and as desirable as following Jesus, even because we've tasted and we've seen that he's good to us, but that it still comes with the cost. What's the one thing you would just tell somebody if they're just realizing this, and like you're about to head you're about to take this journey with a different view than you have before? Anything we would leave them with advice for kind of beginning that after, hey, it's okay to doubt, it's okay to feel like you don't have it all figured out? Or is that the...
Yeah, I think the cost is friendship. I think that's the real cost of following Jesus, is you get a friend. And some people go, well, that's not a cost. In a way, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Because friendship has connection, has, in a sense, belonging. And those are all things that, in some ways, especially our individualism, that creates some problems, especially in our private, secret moments.
Yeah.
But I think that when you follow it down, friendship is a great cost.
Well,
does that make sense?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. Anyone else want to add to that? That's pretty good.
Yeah, friendship has a cost. If you're going to be friends with somebody, you have to, we've all chosen not to be in friendship at one point or another, or not deep friendship, because the person that we were thinking about just had a different set of values or taste, or they like this kind of music and we didn't care for that kind of music, or, whatever. So, but friendship, even when you're with somebody that you're super compatible with, there's always this give and take that takes place in the relationship. And so, yeah, I like that. Friendship is the price. I like it.
Melanie, you concur?
Concur. I do concur.
I do. I thought so. I do too. I think that's good. So we did have 2 questions, and this just makes me laugh every time. I can't see it and not laugh, because somehow our online chat system threw out one of our favorite members of all time and made him put in a different moniker. So Nashville Tim has become Nashville Tim.
Oh,
like the Nashville.
Gnashing of teeth.
So my goodness.
So it's no longer
I
Nashville.
hope that's not because of any life changes or something.
No, I don't know. This is what it came
Not
up
that
with.
I know of. It would be a surprise to me.
So when I saw it, I'm like, Nashville Tim. I was like, okay, well, but he asked, so is it okay for a person to follow in the shadows and then come forward at what may be the last moment?
Is it okay?
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but is it possible? Sure. Thief on the Cross comes to mind.
I was going to say that's probably the
here's if the price is friendship, though, the price that you pay is that if you meet a really cool person and you had the chance to know them longer, you always kind of wish that you would have. I don't know if you've ever done that. If you've, occasionally you'll meet somebody. I remember being in one place where I met this really cool person just a few months before we moved. And they'd been in that community the whole time I'd been there. And I was like, I wish I'd spent time with that person. They're awesome. And now I'm moving and I'm not going to have that opportunity. And so I think that and this is one of the problems when we put streets of gold and amazing food and living forever in front of Jesus, that the goal is that, as opposed to friendship with God, is that, well, then what am I really missing out if I wait till the end? If I wait till the end and make that last minute decision, and you'll see a lot of people spending a lot of time trying to go, oh, you got to make, you might get hit by a bus. You might, something might happen to you before you can, and okay, but could we talk about the real thing here? It's friendship with God. You are missing out on an amazing friendship. you are missing. That is what you are losing by waiting. And so nobody's punishing you for that. That's what you lose. You lose awesome time with somebody who's cool and wonderful.
And I think also, for the record, if you're following someone around sort of in the shadows, that's called stalking, and that's illegal. So,
thank you, Melanie, for making sure that
I just want to.
It's good that Nashville Tim understands that.
Yeah.
So. just
to kind of make it creepy,
just so everybody knows we're not picking on somebody who's defenseless here. Nashville Tim happens to be married to Melanie, so we can tease here.
She just called him out, so that's good.
Well, no, I totally resonate with that, because even if you know that there is someone that you'd like to be in a relationship with, but because of circumstances cannot be.
Yeah.
I knew Heather, my wife, long before we were married. And I was married at the time that I met her. And the funny part was, when you're in a bad relationship, it will highlight other things and other people. And when I met Heather, I was just, almost like a little halo, over her head. And I just thought to myself, what an amazing person this is. It was without romantic feelings or whatever, but like, this is a really grounded, nice person who always has a smile, has a hug, is genuinely happy to see you. And it wasn't just me. This is how she was with all kinds of people, at least in my interactions with her. And then when you look back at your life and go, man, if I'd have made a couple decisions a little bit differently, or I would have pursued things differently in a different way, I would have had more time with my wife than I ended up having or will ever. I mean, you can't get those back. And so not letting it be regret, because you did what you did, and it is what it is. But to think of how much more time you could have had, and where you might even be now as your relationship has grown and has changed, and you become different people, and you do all these different things, and you go through these stages, and then you can look back on those and have a warm place in your heart for them.
And if I can just totally add one more layer to it, one of the other true joys in life is introducing two cool people to each other.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, one of I don't know how it was when you went to Sabbath school, which we call Sabbath school in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And if you're listening to this and you attend church on Sunday, you call it Sunday school. But in Sabbath school, we were always told that, you get these crowns, and for every person that you bring to Jesus, you get a little star in your crown. Did anybody else get told that?
Yes.
And as I grew up,
it was watches for us, but go ahead.
Yeah. Of course, I'm sorry.
They took my crown.
I figured that was what it was.
They took my crown away. Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, what I really realized is that there's a biblical basis for that, by the way. But the metaphor really that's being set up is that these stars are people. They're people that you've brought to Jesus, and now they're with Jesus for eternity, and they're there, and that's the reward of heaven. And so for me, that one of the greatest rewards of heaven, besides friendship with God, is seeing the people I love and care about being there, also knowing Jesus and loving Jesus and experiencing eternity together in heaven. And that is the reward. There is no crown, no jewel that could possibly touch the people that I care about and that I love about. And that doesn't, for me, I don't get all scared that, well, if I don't accept Jesus and I'm not doing what Jesus said, that now that person's not going to be in heaven, because I believe that God is fair to everybody. And just because Ken makes mistakes, somebody else isn't punished for Ken not doing what he was supposed to do. But what it does is, for me, it's just that having that little part that you play in somebody's life that makes their life better. That's just a reward. It's just rewarding to have a part in that, not to think that you're the reason that everything, but just to have that little part. And that's another reason for me not to put off. It's to get to be a part of the big game, to play in the Super Bowl, to be a part of things, not to join the after party. I mean, if you walked into the stadium and they let you down onto the field and you got to be a part of the after party, it's different than if you played in the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you get to be a part of it. It's great. Yay. I mean, they give you a ring still. That's fantastic. But to actually play in the game, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's actually my favorite message of the story of prodigal son, is that the son was there all along, never even realized the blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. All right, we have the one now that we teased you with in first service.
All right.
Second service, we ran over and we did not do the response. So this question is, if all things are possible with God, can God save someone after they've died?
Well, technically, God is saving everybody who's saved after they die at this point, except for maybe Elijah and Enoch. So, yes, there we go. That was easy.
That was super easy. All right.
Yeah, I think thank goodness we're not God. So, yeah, I believe he does.
Here's the thing. God is fair. The Bible tells me that God doesn't desire the destruction of the wicked. Which doesn't, I'm not in the camp that believes that God, that everybody eventually makes it to heaven. I'm not in that camp, because I believe in God's free will. I believe that God doesn't force people to be somewhere where they'd be miserable for eternity. But I also believe that God's default is to have people with him who want to be with him.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some people who have rejected Christ and rejected God because some of us have done a terrible job of representing him. And they didn't reject God, they rejected me, or they rejected somebody else who was just in there like, if that's who Jesus is, then I want nothing to do with that, because that isn't loving. And what they were rejecting was actually Satan, not God. And God said, and I believe with my whole heart that God will be fair to those people and say, yeah, then no, you do love me. You do love me. You just didn't know me. You didn't know who I was because of the poor example of the people who took my name.
Yeah.
So anyway, I really, again, to be saved after you die, I'm not, in my philosophy, I don't take on what the Church of Latter-day Saints would take on, and saying that, people can get baptized for the dead and that sort of thing. I'm not going to take that on. I know that there's a text in the Bible, one text that says something about that. We have no idea what that was. It was something that was going on at that point, but we have no idea what theologically for sure that was talking about. So the point I would just make to you is choose Jesus now. Yeah. It's because it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
But taste and see.
Yeah, I think his the line that he says, do not fear those that can destroy the body. I don't think God looks at death the same way we do, as this, the physical death, as final as we do.
No, and I agree with you too, and I think it probably solidified for me. I lost an uncle during COVID who'd had some other health issues, and he hadn't been practicing anything, I think, for a really, really long time, and rough around the edges. Never heard him profess anything about loving God or knowing God, and even though I'm pretty sure he did, because he lived his life in such a way that he had been damaged again by the church and by people in the church, but yet there was nobody that you wanted to call if you were in trouble more than him, who would drop everything, and he'd drive cross country for you if that's what you needed, and he wouldn't ask twice. He would just be already on the road and let me know what to do when I get there. And after he passed, and just the thought had come, and after thinking about it, praying about it, and reading a whole bunch of different texts about it, I just felt like, you know what? I believe when I get to heaven, I'm going to see him there, and I think that's going to be pretty awesome. So that ends our questions. Those were good questions. Yep. And even though we only did one this week from the from the front, and the one thing I wanted to, and I think we did this, I think right after I started coming to the hospital church, now WholeLife Church, is finishing the message with, and I think that was, if I remember right, that was a pretty important message, where we finished with the quote from Ellen White.
Yeah, that was a quote from, I believe, Christ Object Lessons.
Yeah,
and thanks to Andy McDonald who sent me that quote.
Did he?
He sent me an email last week and said, "Hey Ken, I heard the topic of your sermon. Just felt impressed to send you this quote." And I was like, "Ooh, I know where that fits. That was a missing piece." So
yeah. And so we're going to finish with that quote because I think it's something worth pondering and worth listening to. And the first time Andy used it, I remember we talked about it on the podcast for quite a while, just that at the ending of it, and had lots of feedback. And I think it just can touch your heart if you just take and listen in and think on it. It says, "Lord, take my heart, for I cannot give it. It is thy property. Keep it pure, for I cannot keep it for thee. Save me in spite of myself, my weak, unchristlike self. Mold me, fashion me, raise me into a pure and holy atmosphere where the rich current of thy love can flow through my soul." Even in a verbiage that we don't use anymore, that's still pretty powerful, and it still makes a really good point, and it really makes you want to just give your heart to God and let him take care of it. And it's a really, really good reminder. So this week we're coming up on, what is it? The inclusivity of the call. Is that the final message?
It is the final message in this particular series. Yeah.
Oh man, that means more work. There's we're going to have to do new graphics. We're going to have all kinds we're going to have to come up with new topics.
A new speaker.
Oh, no, that's right.
Yeah. So we're really excited that after this, Melanie's going to do a 3-part series to kick things off for her stay here. So
that's right.
I think we'll give her the big chair on the podcast, and I'll just join and she can.
Nope, I like my stool. I will stay up here.
All right.
Thank you, though.
By the way, as we wrap it up, I just wanted to say one of our listeners told me that our podcast is the perfect length. So I hope that you're walking into your house as you're hearing these words.
There you go.
Because he said that was my drive home.
That's it. Well, hopefully traffic was maybe a little bit heavier than normal. So yeah, I jinxed us. I said it was
50 minutes. So.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be quick. And this is about normal. Maybe a little bit longer than normal, but that's
Nathaniel,
okay.
Are you home?
Are you, Nathaniel? Oh, Nathaniel, no, he's about walking in, I bet. Right, bud? Text me. I need to know. Tomorrow, this is Tuesday, so you understand how it works. A Wednesday morning, or if you're on the way home, I need to know, were you at work or were you walking home? Because I know sometimes you'll listen in the morning, but usually that's reserved for sports talk. So, we know our place. We're not here to, butt in on anything. But, that's going to do it for this week. So come back for the final, and then we can start prepping for Melanie for the next couple of weeks. This is going to be fun. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and have a great week.